And if you then move this circle that's at the navel, and you just bring the whole thing down to the same center as the square, then you get the circle here. And you see how it cuts that corner, just that little bit right there, and it cuts it right there, and right there, and right there. And interesting enough, if you were to measure the square that fits around the body there, the perimeter of that, and then you were to measure the circumference of that, if you have a perfectly formed body, they're the same. And it's been determined, and if you study, you'll see, that when the square and the circle, in China they talk about squaring the circle and circling the square, when the perimeter of the square and the circumference of the circle are the same, that's when human consciousness focuses in, and that's when life begins. And now one step further, if you were this square that goes around the human body, if you put a circle inside of that square, which is this blue in here, and then up here at this circle, you were to come down here and draw a circle around with this to here being your measuring stick, you get this little orange one up here. Guess what? This, relative to this, is exactly mathematically proportionate to the size of the Earth to the size of the Moon. This was determined at least 2,000 years ago. What does it mean? I mean, what does it mean that in the proportions of the human body, the very planet that we're standing on and the moon that circles around it is in there, in the very proportions, predetermined? Is it just a coincidence or an accident? I don't think so. In fact, we know for sure because of what I'm about to show you in a minute. I've just mentioned about Kepler and him extending this idea out to, because he knew about this idea also. He knew that the Earth and the Moon were in proportion. That's why he believed that everything had to be in the solar system. I believe it's absolutely everything to the most distant galaxy and the sizes of every galaxy, etc., and everything. But we can prove it in our own solar system. There's a book written. The guy took all of the relationships that the computer found and put them into a book. It's about, an inch thick, and it's a couple hundred different possible relationships that you could ever think of. We're going to show one Chiron and I think Mars. I can't remember. Wait till I get on there. I just chose 3 of them. But there are about 200 of them that they've picked out, and it's called the Book of Coincidences. And so we were going to, I had got it all together, I got the money together and everything else, and we were going to make a movie about this, a documentary, to show how this was, because this man figured it out. He came over here and then realized, oh my gosh, I'm going to be famous. And he didn't want to be famous, and so he wouldn't allow the movie, and he won't allow anyone to even use his name. So I can't tell you who did it. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But there's only 1,000 copies of the book in the world. And this is one of the pages. I got this one too. I just did this last night for the first time. One more thing I got to show you first. If you take the edge of the Earth over to the edge of the Earth, the diameter of the Earth, and from the center of the Earth to the center of the Moon, and then you draw these lines right here, this angle right here is 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 24 seconds, and which happens to be the exact angle and precise proportions of the Great Pyramid. This is interesting because Hermes, who most people who've studied this believe was also a man named Thoth, in the Emerald Tablets that was written by Hermes, he states how the Great Pyramid was built from the proportions of the Earth. Well, whether or not Thoth or Hermes actually built the Great Pyramid, we can't prove that. But we can prove that what he has just said inside that statement is fact. That angle right there is 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 24 seconds. And so this is a precise arrangement of what we just talked about. Now I can go to this other thing that we're going to talk about. This is one of his pages out of this book. And it's the relationship between Chiron and Pluto. And in other words, this is the orbit of these two bodies. This is Pluto here. And these are a very simple relationship. All you have to do is, and the sun is in the center, all you have to do is draw a 5-sided pentagon, and then you draw one down facing the other way, then you draw one up, and then you draw one down, and you draw one up, and on the inner one you draw a circle, and on the outer one you draw a circle, and those lines go up and form the exact relationship between the Sun, Chiron, and Pluto. It's 99.8% perfect, considering we have a moving system through space and time. Everything's moving through there. They're not only going around this way, but the whole thing is moving like this, as a solid body, moving around the galaxy, connected to the star Sirius. It's pretty amazing that a simple drawing like this could do that. But when you start looking at first 1, then 2, then 50, then 100, then 150, these relationships, and they're all that way. Anything you can think of, any relationship between, say, the Earth and Mars and the Earth and Venus or Earth and Mercury or anything like that, it's already been worked out. They're all there, every single doggone one of them. This is another simple one here. This is the relationship of Earth to Mars. Earth and Mars. Really simple. Just draw a 5-pointed star down and 1 pointed up. The inner circle goes up and is the orbit of Mars relative to the Sun. The outer one, of the Earth. And the outer one becomes the orbit of Mars. And it also is 99.8% perfect. They're all 99.8 or 99.9. I think there's one that's 99.7. The fact that could happen is not a coincidence, even though it's called a book of coincidences. Everything. And so, what this is saying is that everything's predetermined. And that's what sacred geometry shows clearly. But there's only certain places where things can happen. And you can see where they're going to be by the geometrical proportions of things. It's possible for the human mind to understand the entire universe on a physical level. You could grok the whole thing with just a little bit of study. And that does this funny thing to the left and the right side of your brain. It's the beginning. It's not the end. It's not what it's all about. It's only the first step. Now, this one's a really interesting one. I chose it for this reason. All over the ancient world, they built temples to try to determine basically the tropic of Cancer and the tropic of Capricorn, the maximum winter dropping of the sun to the maximum. You have the summer. What is that? It's the winter, spring. The difference in those. It's winter, spring, I think. But it's when the sun swings one way down and swings down the other way, and you try to determine those points. You need to know the equinoxes so you can do your planting and all these things like this. They could have simply drawn this drawing in the sand. One pentagon down, one up, one down, one up. It's just 4 of them. One was 5, one was 2, and one was 4. And drawn the circles inside there like that, drew them down into a ring, and if you could put them over a sphere, those rings, as they fit over a sphere, precisely locate the Tropic of Cancer, the equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn. That is 100% perfect. It is absolutely right on. Now, this whole thing about a star tetrahedron inscribed in the sphere has come about it in a slightly different way. We were showing how it is the basis of all biological life forms, and how in the microcosm, and how the relationships of the 5 atomic solids are out